Hello, my name is James Haynes of the Epsom Newell Times. We're at the North East Surrey College of Technology in the constituency of Epsom Newell. Today is Monday the 17th of June 2024 and I'm interviewing Mhairi Fraser of the Conservative Party. Welcome, Mhairi.
Thank you for having me, James, and thank you, Nescott.
My first question is, why do you want to be an MP in the constituency of Epsom Newell?
Why do I want to be an MP? Well, I specifically want to be the MP for Epsom Newell because it has been my family's home for almost 20 years. I used to, as a university student, work behind the bar at the Marquis of Granby. I worked at Leatherhead Food Research. I volunteered for the hospital radio at Epsom Hospital. All my younger siblings went to school here and my mum has never left. So it's an area that I have a real interest in seeing do well. It's a deeply personal interest. And I do think the best way of affecting change is to sit as a member of Parliament and be able to represent your community on the front line, both on local issues and national issues.
A big issue for young people currently is conscription. What is wrong with conscripting young adults in the military?
So I think this has been a bit of a myth with the new programme that's been suggested of national service. National service would offer two options to 18-year-olds across this country. There would be a highly selective military programme for about 100,000 18-year-olds. Not everyone that even wanted to do that would get onto that programme because it is very, very selective. That's the intention behind that, because nobody wants the military to have people in it that don't want to be there. That's not going to provide an effective fighting force to this country. But other 18-year-olds would just be required to do sort of one weekend a month of citizen service. So that might be helping the ambulance services, the police, the lifeboat services. And, the intention behind that is to foster a sense of community. It's a great leveler. Lots of countries do it. France, Denmark, Sweden, they have similar programs in place. Give young people the skills that they need to go into the future. Also just sort of the confidence to realize that they can be good at something. And also to give people that feeling of giving back, because that's actually an incredibly good thing for somebody's mental health, to feel like they mean something to other people. So no, it's not the conscription sort of idea that's been pushed in some sectors. What I would say is just a couple of weeks ago, we were celebrating what people that age did during D-Day, making the ultimate sacrifice. And I think young people of this country would be perfectly able to do a weekend a month of community service when we've looked at previous generations doing so much more. And I've spent a lot of time speaking to local charities in Epsom. One of the big issues is they tend to be run by older people. And there's quite a lot of concern that some of those charities are going to find it difficult to continue if they don't find some younger people to take over. And I think this would be a great chance for people in Epsom, Newell, Ashstead and Leatherhead to find out where their interests lie, what makes them feel fulfilled, and really contribute to the community in that way.
The Conservatives aim to build and modernise 250 GP surgeries. Will you push for Epsom Newell to be a part of this?
I certainly would. I think if you're the MP for an area, one of your key roles is getting investment and getting government initiatives to benefit your community first and foremost. I've always said that my priority would be being a good local constituency MP first and foremost. So yeah, I absolutely would be doing that.
And would this reduce waiting times for the NHS?
I think obviously a new GP surgery would reduce waiting times, but I think there's also a push for sort of greater efficiency through the NHS. I would like to see the money that's put into the NHS pushed much more towards frontline services and the people who provide those frontline services. We have a current system where there's quite a lot of bureaucratic layers of management that don't add to patient experience or the working experience of those providing that care. We have some orthopaedic centres paying £500 for an artificial hip, while other ones pay £5,000 for pretty much the same thing. That's just some of the examples of the lack of efficiency. And I think if we could really address the root cause of that, then we can see better patient experience and reduced waiting times. And we should also say that obviously the pandemic had a huge impact on waiting times. If you lock a country down for months and months and months on end, this is going to be a consequence. But these initiatives have all been put in place and they're in our manifesto to address that.
A big issue for Epsom Newell is the Green Belt. Is there a suitable compromise for building more adequate housing whilst protecting the Greenbelt?
Yes, and protecting the Greenbelt is my number one local priority. It's also sort of an urgent priority because we've got until about the end of the year before the local plan is voted on. Chris Grayling, my predecessor, actually put forward a plan for development on a brownfield site called Kiln Lane and Longmead, which would provide a huge number of houses within transport distance of town so that people wouldn't have to use cars. It would really provide the affordable accommodation for retail workers, hospitality workers, and young people close to amenities that would actually meet the housing need, the specific housing needs of this constituency. So if you look at what our actual projected housing need is, it can definitely be met by building on brownfield sites. And I see no argument why we should sacrifice the biodiversity and character of our area, because once it's gone forever. Unless that's deeply, deeply necessary, I don't think that should be an option we're looking at. And actually, you will sometimes hear people say the national government has mandated a certain number of houses. That is not the case. Paragraph 61 of the National Planning Policy Framework calls that number an advisory starting point. Paragraph 145 says that we don't need to change Greenbelt boundaries in light of the local plan. I know this because I'm a lawyer and I've looked at it. I will do the work. I've already been advising the Greenbelt group here on legal strategy because I do believe that, even before, hopefully if I'm lucky enough to be voted in, you put in the groundwork so you can hit the ground running.
My next question is, do you support the Rwanda scheme?
The Rwanda scheme is a difficult one. I do think we need a viable deterrent to the criminal gangs that are putting people in danger, bringing them on boats over from France. One concern is that the Rwanda scheme is too expensive. I think it's estimated to cost about £350 million over 5 years, which is a lot. But then we also paid France £500 million over 3 years to try and stop the boats coming over in the first place. And that just hasn't worked. And it's not particularly in France's interest for it to work, given they're facing the same issues in France. So we cannot have small boats continue coming across, putting people's lives in danger and rewarding criminal gangs. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be another viable deterrent to the Rwanda scheme. Denmark is looking at the same thing. Italy is looking at Albania. The previous Labour government, actually in 2004, was looking at doing the same thing in Tanzania. So this is not a new idea. And we did see the deterrent factor because when the Act was passed, people started moving from the north of Ireland down to the Republic of Ireland because they realised that actually, if you come here illegally, you might not be able to stay in the UK. I would like to see some kind of overseas processing of asylum claims in some form or other, because to me, that makes sure that the people that are granted asylum here are genuine asylum seekers. And I do believe in helping genuine asylum seekers, but we're not just seeing genuine asylum seekers come over on boats. There are a lot of economic migrants coming over too. And I get from a human perspective why they want to do that. But the primary role of the British government needs to be to protect and defend the interests of the British people first and foremost. So some scheme is needed. And at the moment, there doesn't seem to be a viable alternative.
Do you think Brexit has been a success?
I think people who say Brexit has been a failure haven't taken into account the fact that we are now the fourth largest exporter in the world. We have grown faster than Germany, Japan, Italy. By 2028, we're predicted to also have grown faster than France. Look, I was a Brexiteer. I voted to leave and I campaigned for the leave side of the Brexit campaign. But I completely understand why people voted Remain. I don't think they're unpatriotic and don't love this country for doing so, and I understand why they were disappointed by the way the vote panned out. But what I cannot tolerate is this attitude that the vast majority of people who voted leave, and particularly working class people, were fooled and didn't know what they were voting for. Because to me, a plumber or an electrician or a tradesperson could actually have been closer to the realities of us being in the EU than many of my former colleagues that worked in the city, who to some extent hover above politics regardless of what happens. And I don't think reading and swallowing a Guardian opinion column And basing your view on that gives you more of a right to make an informed decision than somebody that looks at real life lived experience. And I think if we went back into the EU now, it would be really, really dangerous to the social fabric of our country, because that was the biggest democratic mandate the British people have ever given. And to turn around and say, I'm sorry, we've thought again, you made the wrong decision, I think would be very dangerous for our social fabric indeed, and would disengage an entire generation from ever being involved in politics again.
You spoke at the popcorn launch in February. Will the formation of the popular Conservative faction create more friction within your party and cause internal disputes in Parliament?
So I'm not a member of Popcorn, I should start by saying that. I have been involved with and spoken to numerous political groupings within the Conservative Party, and I made a very clear decision from day one that I'm about policies and not about people. So I will stand on a stage and speak if the ideas that are being spoken about are ones that I engage with and agree with, regardless of whether certain people are on that stage or regardless of whether certain people aren't on that stage. I was asked to speak on the topic of personal liberty, which is something I feel very strongly about. I was born in Hong Kong, and since 1997, you can see what's happening with state control in Hong Kong. And I'm very much of the view that once you start to give up your freedoms, it's very difficult to get them back. And I would have liked to have seen people engage with the ideas that I was speaking about, rather than engaging and attacking me on the basis of who happened to be on the same stage at the same time. Because I think there is a place within the Conservative Party and within our national politics for just civilised debate. And I think I've also shown that I put country before party. So if I see my party doing something that I do not think is beneficial to the people of this country, I will be brave enough from literally day one, and I will take the flag to stand up for the ideas that I believe are better for this country.
Is Israel using proportionate force in its own defence?
Yeah, this is, again, another incredibly difficult and emotive topic. I have always been, I would say, a natural ally of the concept of Israel. I think it's one of the few countries in the Middle East, and I have spent time in the Middle East, where you can be a woman or a homosexual and be treated identically to everyone else. That's not particularly common in the Middle East, so I see the value in Israel. And I also believe in Israel's right to defend itself, because if somebody had come in and slaughtered 250 young people at Glastonbury, I don't think we would think it was against our rights to defend ourselves against that kind of existential attack. However, I do think at this point in time, the response has been disproportionate, because we are seeing far too many civilian casualties. And not only is it appalling to see children, particularly in distress like that, it's actually not in Israel's interest either, in my view, because you could wipe out Hamas as it currently stands, but if you've traumatized an entire generation of Palestinians, you're going to create Hamas too, and that's going to be even worse. So to the extent we're seeing civilian casualties like that, something needs to change.
You have first-hand experience in SEN student placement. Does the Conservative promise of 60,000 more places and 15 additional SEN schools seem attainable in the near future?
I think it does seem attainable, and another thing that I think the Conservatives are proposing or not proposing to do, which will be beneficial to SEN students, is to fight against this proposal for 20% VAT on school fees, because there are 900 special needs students in Epsom and Ewell who are currently educated at independent schools. And, you know, it's been accepted, there has been a shortage of places, it's been very difficult for parents, and I've spoken to a lot of parents about this, to get their children the right education that meets their needs. But if you have up to 900 students suddenly having to pay VAT on that specialised education that at current, while we wait for increased capacity, only independent schools provide, that's going to cause harm to every special needs student in this constituency, because the dedicated attention that each of them is getting now will only be spread out between more people.
Do you think that the abolition of non-elected peers in the House of Lords is overdue?
No, I don't. I think there is real merit to having that upper chamber in the Houses of Parliament. I'm pretty alarmed by Labour's idea that at the age of 80 you would have to step down. I think that suggests that people of an older age don't have a contribution still to make to this country. And the point of the House of Lords is to provide some kind of experience and check and balance against what the House of Commons is doing. And there are amazing peers who have decades of experience and are at the top of their fields. And until the point they feel that they cannot provide, the service to our democracy that they currently do, I think they should be able to continue providing that service.
Okay, thank you, Mhairi Fraser.
Thank you.
Party. That's all my questions.